Thank you so much, Mayor. Appreciate those remarks. I do have a couple questions that we've put together from some of the folks who registered. And I know you have a hard stop soon, and then we can get into more of a Q&A. But I think one of the one that stood out to me was sort of what are the biggest misconceptions you encounter about drugs, and how do these shape kind of where we are now?
Well, that's a big question. There's probably about 14 different ways I can answer it. So I'm just going to be unfiltered. Okay, none of this was scripted or planned. I'll give you a couple of anecdotal things. Frankly, as the mayor of the city of Vancouver, I'm tired of the narrative that weaponizes, we live in a police state and the police are bad and they don't understand, what's going on, and they're marginalizing communities. We had this thing called Project Barrage, where, by the way, if you ever get an opportunity to hang out with our incredible members of the VPD, they are probably the best trained individuals in de-escalation training and understanding the humanistic side of things. Like, they just blow me away. So Project Barrage was a big push going after organized crime. So not vulnerable individuals, but organized crime that were preying on vulnerable individuals. And over a 6-month period, one of the net results was the calls for overdoses decreased by about a third, or about 1,200 fewer calls. So maybe not 1,200, but it's definitely more than one life was saved through the efforts of our compassionate police officers that serve our city so well. And so we have to get away from this crap, like the politicization, people weaponizing this stuff for their own political gain. And let's look at what we're trying to achieve here. So that's one of the cool things that we'll continue to support.
Can I ask you about Barrage real quick about that?
Sure.
So maybe you can just also describe what happened, in other words, what was the operation, and then maybe respond to some critics who have said that, how did this not just displace folks somewhere else? So if they weren't in this neighborhood, they're now in a neighborhood they never were in.
Yeah, well, I should get Deputy Chief Howard Chow to answer that question, but I'm sure he will. I'll give you my flavor on it, and then Howard, if I'm wrong, just go. Yeah, so long story short, there's stating the obvious, there's a huge organized crime element that's preying on the residents of Vancouver, and specifically in the downtown east side. And it was unsafe. So we launched, the VPD launched a push to, increase the number of officers, investigations, enforcement of, laws in that area. And from that, crime went down, and it did not pick up in other jurisdictions. So it actually worked.
So you were going to give a couple more anecdotes. I interrupted you. So.
Yeah, what was the question?
We're talking about the misconceptions and how that shapes sort of where we are right now in Vancouver and the metro area.
Yeah, and look, I'm only speaking from my personal experience on the second one and my personal views. And I know there will be people that disagree with it, but this is coming from a place of love and just, being very pragmatic. When I look at, the situation from the lenses of a father, and someone who has dealt or seen first responders in action. And I understand why we go towards, let's say, safe supply. Okay, totally get it. It's an alternative to poison drugs. I wouldn't let my kids touch that shit with a 10-foot pole. Okay, and I understand, and I know, like, there are people that I love in this room that will completely disagree with me, and I know their life experiences will get them to that spot, and they can 100% justify it, and I can't even debate them. Okay, so it's not about that. When I look at our first responders who have been on the streets, and some of them have dealt with some significant health issues, not a one of them will want to take opioids, painkillers, because they're afraid of getting addicted to it. I know I wouldn't want my kids to experiment with safe supply, and the reality is people do that. We just live in that environment, and it can lead to down a path. And so I know that's controversial, but let's call it as we see it. These are my own personal views, and I can tell you what's happening on the streets right now isn't working. And so if we can approach everything from a place of love and put ourselves in that situation and what would we want for our families, I think we get to a better answer.
And I think when you say controversial, I'll differ from you on one aspect here, okay? When you're saying controversial, because I think it might be controversial among a sort of a small group of local folks, but it's when you look at the data, when you look at the evidence, when you look at, there's been now multiple reviews of drug supply and kind of what that does and how that's, it sort of betrays the reality of the fact that, your brain actually wants fentanyl. Why wouldn't it? It's much better and stronger. I mean, we forget why people take drugs in the first place. They feel good. I mean, and now we're telling our brain this is not, we're trying to tell our brain that's saying this is awesome, that this isn't good. And so, I think actually what's more controversial is the fact that it's taken us so long to kind of wake up to that fact.
Yeah, and that comment that I made, this is coming from a place of lived experience as well. Like our family, our kids, our friends, they are all trained on administering Narcan. And a couple of our friends have had to do that to save their kids. So this is not like some philosophical sort of whatever. This is real life. And if we could rewind everything back, 8 years, would be even more vocal on a current path.
I want to also ask you that, if because clearly when you look at kind of the way municipalities are in this country versus provinces and federal versus many other places, not just the United States, you see that what I've learned is how hampered, actually surprisingly, how hampered it seems municipalities are and how dependent they are on the sort of political whims and wins of the larger province that they're in. But if you could get Premier Eby to do sort of one thing on your wish list, what would that be? You were talking to him face to face and he would do it. You can list 10 things if you want.
Oh yeah, no, I'm going to say this respectfully. Like there's no energy around this. Just do what you say you're going to do. On September 16th, committed to 400 involuntary care beds, compassionate beds to take care of people. We have 0 beds in the city of Vancouver. And so we can talk about how there's street disorder, a whole host of things. Push that off to the side. People are dying. Just keep your word. Like, we already know what the answer is. We don't have to have a lot more discussions and try to, figure things out. We know there are people that are very sick, that need help, that should not be on the streets, and they're stranded. Once again, I go towards being a parent. In fact, we have a colleague who is dealing with this. I'm not going to mention names. I'm not going to mention where the person's a colleague, has a kid with a significant mental health issue, still functional, in society, but has a mental health issue. And they're deeply concerned about that individual or their kid. And they're looking for help. And there's no help available. How is that? That thing has, the potential of turning into something incredibly horrific. And we see it all the time. And so this isn't just about the 600 people with significant mental health issues as well. This is about our family, our friends, our neighbors, our colleagues. One out of 100 people have schizophrenia in this province. Did you know that? It's some form of schizophrenia. So this is out there. And until we start dealing with the issue, and once again, to the province, deal with it. Literally, we understand we have a lot of challenges, but if you make a commitment to opening up 400 beds and you haven't opened a single one, all that was, it was a nice little soundbite for the media. Maybe it got you some votes, but it did shit. And it's the people that are paying are the residents of this great province of ours, and families are getting destroyed because of it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No.
Didn't mean to swear.
No, that's important. And I do note, there's sort of, we have, you know, if you look at where we were versus a year or two ago, we now have sort of multiple czars on the, we have a czar here in municipal level. There's a federal czar, and actually Kevin Brousseau, who wanted to come and couldn't. But there's now multiple, which is, I also find it interesting to adopting that verbiage, because we don't even say that in the United States anymore. That's a colloquial term the media made up. But here it's an official term, as a czar, which is interesting. But there's now multiple czars.
Yeah.
So what's going on?
So look, I think of Senator Larry Campbell, former Mayor Larry Campbell, who I have a lot of respect and time for. He's amazing, and I think we're really well served by him. And so what's the probability he's going to come up with the answer? Yeah, you know what? People with significant mental health challenges should get some health care. Like, I think the probability is almost 100%. I'd be shocked if it wasn't. So great. So we pushed it off another 6 months. And in that time, more people are going to die. More people are going to suffer. Families are going to get destroyed. People aren't going to feel safe on the streets. It's crazy.
Has there really been no movement since the September? I mean, I remember that announcement. We were there, and then we did something at City Hall. Has there really been no behind the scenes, discussions, movement towards that since then?
Look, I'm a data-driven guy. The last time we looked at the data, which was this morning, we have 0 involuntary care beds in the city of Vancouver since that announcement. New. Sure. And is that enough? No. Well, yeah, okay, and look, and no, and that's the great thing about having these conversations, because the one thing we all do is we all care about this. So I will approach this with passion. We have 600 people with significant mental health challenges. It is not enough. If they were your families, we should be demanding this. People are dying. People are suffering. And I'm sorry, I will hold myself accountable to the same thing, even though it's not in our jurisdiction. We're not healthcare. We have an obligation to take care of people in the broader context of our society as well. And so I will enthusiastically say it is not enough. I don't care if it's 20, because that is not enough. I don't care if it's 200, because it's not enough. And when the province commits to 400 beds and they have 20, that's 5%. That's a rounding error. And by the way, 400 wasn't enough. I believe we need about 3,200. And I'm sorry, this is coming from a place of love. Let's have that debate. Let's get all let's roll up our sleeves, put our elbows up, because you know what? If we have a lively debate around this, and the answer is we come out of this and we get more involuntary care beds, we can all high five each other and celebrate, because at the end of the day, we care about people.
Real quick, and I have to go on the numbers. You said data driven. You know, we keep talking about 400, 600. You just mentioned 3,200. How accurate do you think the numbers are from the province on the number of people who actually need help? Because I've been astounded by what looks like a severe undercount, especially when you look at the way that this is collected.
Yeah, I don't know about the quality of the data, so I can't make a determination. What I can say, and this could be a better question for Deputy Chief Howard Chow later on in the day. Sorry to leave that biscuit with you there, Howard, but I think what you see on the streets would be a good indication as to how much we need. But also, there's a whole hidden, invisible group of individuals that we're not even counting here, that we don't see. The people that are suffering in silence or dying in living rooms in Champlain Heights or Kitsilano, or there's still the stigma, and we know all the verbiage there. So I gut feel, I think the challenge is a lot greater than we think.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mayor Ken Sim, thanks so much for coming and being with us this morning. Appreciate it.